Hey everybody, what's going on? Jordan Connect here with another episode of Embrace the Chase, and I'm pumped out of my mind because we're already on episode 60. Time is flying fast, and we're interviewing some incredible people. But tonight, you all are in for a treat. We have Alex Vorobieff on tonight, or Vorobieff.
You nailed it the first time. Stop! You got it the first time.
Vorobieff, I love it. We were joking before we went live that people butcher his name and say it in different ways, but the Russian phrase is Vorobieff, right?
The Americans Vorobieff, the Russians Vorobieff.
Vorobieff. I love it. That's super cool. But for those of you that are unaware of who Alex is, he's a business consultant. He's also an author. If you've not read his book, you should definitely pick it up. I put a link on the live as well, and any of you watching the replay, you can click his website down below and check out some of the stuff. But he is actually the author of kind of two different platforms. The first is his book, Transform Your Company, which has been out for a while now, that kind of brings your business into focus, talks about discovering, learning, and eliminating is kind of the brief synopsis of that. And then he's launching a magazine called Confident ROI. So you all are in for a treat tonight. Alex, is there anything you'd like to add to that, sir?
Looking forward to being on the show, Jordan, and talking about all that and more.
I love it. So if you could do us a favor and start us from the very beginning, just kind of tell us your story. What actually led you into becoming a business consultant as well as an author?
Sure. I went to college at USC in the early 90s when there was a recession, and I wanted to get a job when I got out of school. And I always wanted to study business. I wanted to be an executive. That was I want to be an executive. And so I needed to get a job first. And they were hiring in accounting. They weren't hiring in most other things, but went to work in accounting for a firm, and I had a number of firms to choose from. One of them being Arthur Andersen, and those guys just seemed like it just wasn't quite a fit culturally. And I interviewed with another firm that was just outside the big 8 at the time. They're down to 4, and it was a company that just focused on real estate companies and doing workouts and focusing on their accounting and finance needs. And what sold me was that I liked their culture. They seemed to be really hardworking, numbers oriented, and they had a partner that basically did a Johnny Carson 1 minute monologue, and he still smoked in his office. This was the early 90s, and he still smoked in the office. I mean, now you go to jail for that. So I liked the irreverence, even though I didn't like the secondhand smoke. And so I went to work for them and started doing cleanups we were doing the S&L cleanups, the savings and loan cleanups, and cleaning up developers that had gone bankrupt or they're insolvent. And it was a great primer in terms of understanding what an asset is worth. And so I did 2 years of that, and I kind of knew I didn't want to be a CPA my whole life, but by doing 2 years of it, I got my license in it, and it gave me some great exposure and some great discipline, understood how a balance sheet works, understood how a P&L is related to that, how the cash flow works, what something is really worth if you can understand the numbers. And so I did that for 2 years and I think 1 month, and then I left. A manager who had worked at that firm, Kenneth Leventhal, we'd been purchased by Ernst & Young. So I got a lot of good training thanks to Ernst & Young. Thank you, EY. We went to work. Yeah, I joined this company that was consolidating the timeshare industry on the day it went public. So it went public, and it had 9 resorts, and in 2 years we had, I think, over 63 on 3 continents. And I worked with the CEO and the director of acquisitions, calculating all the numbers on buying things. So we bought land, we bought existing hotels and converted them. We bought companies. We flew all over and did all kinds of things, and it was interesting. And then I started to realize, gee, the numbers I was projecting weren't necessarily what operations was going to do after the fact. And it really took a coordination of efforts. And that's where I started to notice a theme in my career as a coordinating of efforts. And just because it's clear in the numbers doesn't mean people that'll guide their decisions. So I did that for a couple years. And then I realized, boy, we're not operating these things the way we were planning. And so we're not going to get the return on investment we expected. And so I analyzed it. I wrote up this memo, and they said, great, yeah, we do need this position to do that, and why don't you do it? And so I started managing a sector of the business. And for someone who does deals, it should have been the opposite. You should have understood how a business works from the operations standpoint before you start buying anything. So that was a great tutelage and really got me into operations and got me exposure to a mentor that helped me understand the people side of it. He really focused on the people, and I had always focused on the numbers, and he taught me the numbers are great, but it's all about getting the people to coordinate their efforts that are essential. So I did that for 2 years, and that was good. But I could also see that company was struggling. It was very dysfunctional overall, and I got an opportunity to go to work for a company that was building out the telecom last mile. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, Jordan, but there wasn't high-speed internet everywhere. There was and so what they did, they didn't have fiber in the streets like in downtown. So there were firms that were shooting microwaves off the top of the tallest building and connecting them. So it was pretty heady, things were going fast. Everyone wanted to build out bandwidth, and I helped get this telecommunications infrastructure company developed into something from kind of informal, but help them raise money, help them get debt, help them get their books audited, put in an information system, and more coordinate the efforts of the company, and right up until the telecom bubble popped in 2001. And then the owner liked to play golf, and he said, "Don't worry about it. We'll play more golf. This too shall pass." He was kind of a wise man. And I said, I'm going to get bored. And I like to do things. And I was kind of getting to the point where I was trying to cut every cost we could, to the point where the only thing I had left to do was unplug the soda machine at night. It was like, I had to do something to cut the cost. I said, you don't need me anymore. We've got everything in order, but until the telecom industry comes back, you don't need me. So why don't, and someone needed some help on a project on cleaning up another company. I said, why don't, I'll still help you, but just pay me hourly, and I'll do some other stuff for other people. And that was 15 years ago, and that's what really got me going into being an entrepreneur and to working on doing cleanups of companies, doing turnarounds. It started from there, and it progressed. I would do lots of different types of cleanup projects, seeing all kinds of messes that develop when companies they outgrow their systems and their people and their capabilities to handle the numbers. I got the opportunity to run a company, and I got the opportunity really to make a lot of mistakes. And it got back to the earlier period when my mentor Andy had talked to me about it's more than just the numbers, it's the people. And experimenting on that, and frankly having some failures in leading people and looking for the right tools and looking for the right combination that would work, that over the last 15 years I could see the symptoms, and a lot of times I would deal with the financial symptoms of the problem, and you can get those cleaned up and understand where you're losing money, where you're making money, if you got to cut down your debt, what do you got to do? That's the easy part. But how do you coordinate people's efforts? That's what I've been really focused in on, and finding the right tools for the right company, for the company and for the leader at that moment, that's what I focus on. That's what the book and the magazine and the podcast are now about, is finding the right tools to improve a business, and hearing from people that are actually trying it, not just the frankly the consultant purveying it, but hearing from a business leader, hey, I tried this concept and it worked or didn't work. And that's why it's called confident ROI. It's you want business leaders to hear from other business leaders, what kind of return on investment are they getting on their time and their money when they try to do a business improvement project, to get their team to coordinate their actions better, to hire better. There's a whole gamut of things, but that's kind of from the beginning till now.
I love it. No, that's perfect. That's great. So then, just kind of a selfish question for me and some of my my audience: did your kind of consulting business or consulting firm take off more so because of the book and the podcast, etc., or are all those byproducts because you already had several different clients over the years?
That was a byproduct. It was the success of the consulting, my financial consulting. It was twofold. All my financial consulting clients came from referrals. But I got frustrated because I was always dealing with the symptoms of it. So I was able to take my earnings from that and invest my time and energy. How do we really get to the root cause of it? So it was because there's no shortage of dysfunction and frustration that manifests itself in financial issues, but also manifests itself in people just hating working at companies, that I wanted to be able to, hey, how do we get to that root cause? Instead of me just being a doctor dealing with your financial issue, how do we get to the root cause of it? And that one led to the other.
Okay, I love it. Well, I want to transition right now. For those of you that are watching that are kind of curious, well, how can I connect with Alex? Other than the book that he has written, which you should obviously go get. You can get it off of his website that I have linked below. But Alex, can you talk about how people can interact with you now, like your podcast as well as the magazine that's launching?
Sure. Well, we got a number of different ways. One, starting with the Hey Vorobieff button. One of my friends always call me. He listens to my ideas and like, hey Vorobieff, what does that mean? And so there's a Hey Vorobieff section of the confidentroi.com. If you type that in, you'll go to on my webpage, and down at the bottom there's a Hey Vorobieff. And so if you got a question about any business improvement tool, concept, something you hear me say, you want to know more about it, you want to understand it, hey, just send me a comment. That's kind of the starting point. I have the magazines dropping next week, and if you're interested in both digital and print, because print's making a comeback, just judging by my book requests and book sales, people want to hold things in their hand. So that's coming out, and what that does is bring business concepts to life, and in the structure of what my book is, and I'll talk about that later. But really focusing on hearing from people, and we have two interviews in the first one that are talking about leaders and the struggles they went through and how they turned around their company, what tools helped them, what was the return on investment to do that. And so that's one way. And while I was doing the magazine and listening to the stories that the leaders were telling me, I was like, how am I going to convey this in writing without overdoing it or underdoing it? And I started a podcast just because I didn't want to lose that emotion in the voice when someone's explaining it to them. And I'm sitting at the lunch table trying to write it down. I'm like, how am I going to convey that feeling in his voice? So we launched a podcast that I'll be interviewing the business leaders and talking, hey, what concepts work for you to improve your business? Which ones did or didn't get a return? There's no shortage of, hey, this is great and it solved all my problems. But for a business leader to hear the good and the bad is something there's a shortage of.
I love it.
Confident ROI, you can sign up for the magazine as well as hear the latest podcast. It airs live Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and then a couple of weeks later, the podcast is out. And we have the transcript, so you'll be able to search for different business concepts that are out there, and it's really designed if you're at a position of having to decide which concept to use to improve your business, you can go and find some objective analysis, comments and analysis on it, so that you can confidently select something that's right for your company.
I love it. Is the magazine going to be monthly, semi-annual, quarterly?
It is currently semi-annual.
Okay.
And so we're taking it 1 year at a time and see how it goes there. It's a balance. What really resonates, and that's what I've found sometimes is fine. I always feel like we're searching for the combination. Keep searching for the combination. And if it really depends on which one, we can do more of the magazine, we can do more of the podcast. It's just really what do the users and listeners or readers want more of.
I love it. And I want to mention that we host events here in Cincinnati. So the next event that comes around, I do want to reach out to you about possibly being a speaker. And I've got 3 other people that I know that host events that I'd like to connect you with. I see that you're a speaker. So for any of you that are watching, you can also hire Alex as a speaker. I know some of you out there host your own events. I'd highly recommend doing that. You can go to his website, like I said, and kind of tear all that stuff apart. But I love it, Alex. This is pumping me up. So can you kind of talk about the book just a little bit more about the whole idea behind Transform Your Company? I'm assuming you break down in it several different ideologies about how companies can revolutionize their business. Is that right?
Yeah, transform their business. It all started when I was really frustrated, and I would take it home with me. And it was a Saturday morning. We were at Disneyland, my wife and my daughter, and my wife could tell I was frustrated. And she could sense, is it really this company you're working with? Because you seem to go through this with other companies too. And it was a good point. And she's saying, it's probably you. But she go, yeah, okay, let me finish my coffee here. So I was watching the canoe ride at Disneyland, and I watched the canoe guide row really hard to get the canoe full of Disney guests away from the dock. And some were rowing, some weren't, and the kids were kind of counterproductive. And I'm like, that reminds me of some of the clients I work with, and that the leader ends up making up for people that really don't know what's going on, what their role is. And then it didn't last long. I'm like, well, how are they going to get around the island at this pace? Well, the leader got him off to the side, and then in 90 seconds, he took this motley crew and got them organized and pumped. And he basically started with, hey, this is your fun stick. And he held up the paddle and showed them how to hold it. And he said, if we don't row, we don't go. And there's 3 rules. Number 1, we don't row, we don't go. 2, don't splash. The water used to be blue. It's not anymore. So people don't like it. 3, don't stand up in the boat. Only a fool stands up in a boat. But luckily, I'm a trained fool. And he said, hey, we're going to paddle together. We're going to sing some songs to do that. But inevitably, we're going to get out of sync. And we'll take a little break. We'll get back in sync because that'll help us get around the island in an efficient manner. And he goes, does everyone understand? In less than 90 seconds, boom, they were gone. And I just realized, gee, how many companies I had dealt with where, okay, we get their financials cleaned up, but really coordinating people's efforts. They didn't spend as much time as they did and as intensely as they did on that canoe ride. And so, but that wasn't covered. I went to business school, I went to UCLA, and we never covered that. We covered big company issues, and we covered disruptive startup issues. We didn't talk about mid-sized companies that are sucking the life out of people and that just are having trouble coordinating their actions, and they'd rather hit people with their paddle than coordinate. And so that was this moment of, how do we articulate that to my clients, to people? And it took a few years, but I was also recommending, once I had the numbers cleaned up, I was recommending these systems some are called like EOS traction, scaling up gazelles, E-Myth for some of the smaller companies. But they were these systems. They weren't really planning. They weren't really management systems, but they were a combination of things. And it wasn't, I kept trying to, and some of the clients got it and would try it, but they're like, what is it? And finally, I'm like, they're an alignment tool. They help you answer important questions. And so that people know what's going on, or, hey, we don't know the answer to why we exist and what's important for us, how to behave. And so we got to answer those questions. And so I ended up calling it alignment. And it was after trying a lot of different things, but I finally tried it on one client that was really having trouble understanding it. When I said alignment, he's like, oh, okay, I get it. You're getting people to row in the same direction. And so that's, the book defines this sector, this missing term in the business lexicon that I call business alignment. And I basically deconstruct these tools in that they basically have 5 layers of questions, from deep inside the company with why does it exist, what our core values are, what our culture is, all the way out to the perimeter of the company, frontline employees, what do they need to do to deliver value to customers out there? And just trying to break that down. And that's what the original concept of the book was. And what I found, what ended up being the book that I didn't expect was the people element of it. Because I really like the structure, and you answer all these questions, you kind of color by numbers. Well, I was watching some of my clients, and some of them implemented it, and boom, it was great. Some implemented and nothing happened. And then I talked to different people who implemented these concepts, and they kind of didn't want to admit it, but like, yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And what I saw, and I could see from my sample size as well as talking with others, was really how the leader handled what these systems did, because these systems asked you questions and basically said, who's going to do what do you expect to happen? And then 1 month in, a quarter in, a year in, you're comparing those results. Well, inevitably, the first try, it doesn't go according to plan. And so you have to make adjustments. And when leaders weren't willing to take that feedback and make adjustments, either the people, processes, or products, or pricing, it wasn't going to work. And there were signs as well. I called them emotional no-fly zones. It's kind of I took a military term, and there were just things that were off limits. The leader didn't want to talk about, hey, this one person that's been with me forever, they really can't do their job. Or, don't tell me my product isn't as great as I once thought it was. And and I tell people in the book, if you don't have a good relationship with feedback, don't waste your time and money on these tools. They won't work for you. They'll make you angry. You'll get mad at the consultant. You'll get mad at everybody. But take stock that, can you listen to see what's working and not working, and listen for the combination. If you can't, just save your money, time, stay dysfunctional like it is. It's kind of like, okay, the patient's stable, just stay as is. If you want to go there, it could be painful, but that's the way out.
I love it. That's awesome.
That was a part of the book that I think has a universal thing and is really helpful to people, whether they own the company, lead it, or just work in it, is really looking to see, is an organization able to learn from things? And is it listening for the right combination?
That's awesome. I would agree. That's definitely something that is highly needed in the space. Even when I was going to school, 100%. They only focus on big picture. They're really tiny, nothing really in the middle. So that's awesome. That's perfect.
And the middle just sucks the life out of you.
It does.
When it's not working.
I feel like there's a lot of companies out there that are in the middle, though, that just don't want to admit they are. They just don't necessarily want help. So,
well, and that gets to the leadership having an open, a good relationship with feedback. That when they can see, hey, things aren't going well, and if we have time, but like GE's gone. I'm lucky enough to kind of seeing General Electric go through this. Jack Welch was very much like confronting reality 20 years ago when I came to school. It was one of the first books recommended at Kenneth Leventhal to read. And they were confronting reality. They're either going to be number one or number two in each business they were in, or they're getting out. And then under the era of the next CEO, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that went away. And you didn't really want to confront reality. And we wanted to talk about how we wanted things to be, but not how they were. And there obviously things in the finances, they weren't recognizing some of their liabilities. They're pushing it down. And now they're back to confronting reality. And so if they're not going to confront reality, it's not going to get better. Companies sometimes get lucky, but luck is fleeting, and it's that willingness to confront reality over and over that's really essential. And what no matter what your role in the company is, if it's going to make or break the whole deal.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I do want to respect your time, though, so I want to ask you the last question. Take as long as you want with this question. But the last question I ask everybody on the show is, tell us something that's on your heart or on your mind that's very important to you that you really want people to know about.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking about this, about as we're going through this. I just feel I'm 46 years old, and I feel like I've missed out on a lot of my life not listening for the combination and not knowing it was in me to figure it out. And I get frustrated, and when things didn't go according to plan, I try it louder and harder and faster, and I was that angry guy. Instead of kind of listening and seeing what's working, what's not working, keep trying to find that combination. So I think it's within all of us to be listening and to try different things. And a lot of things aren't going to work. That's okay. But it's a victory to recognize it and to say, okay, what should I try differently? So I would listen for the combination. It's out there. Keep trying to dial it in, and good things can happen. You can unlock everything, because a lot of us are stuck in kind of our own prisons. And if we listen for the combination, we can free ourselves.
I love it. That's great advice. Alex, thanks so much for being on. For those of you that have watched live or those of you that are watching the replay, Alex Vorobieff has an incredible company. Please go check out his website, tear it apart, follow the podcast, grab a copy of the new magazine coming out, and pick up a copy of his book and just digest it. And like he said, if you have any questions, you can go straight to his website. That was at confidentroi.com and click on the Ask Alex button, or what is it, Ask Vorobieff button?
Hey, Vorobieff.
Vorobieff. And just ask him for any explanation, or just introduce yourself and get to know him a little bit better. But Alex, appreciate having you on. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we end?
That was a blast, Jordan. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you. We'll see you guys.